Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crime Chronicles. In today's special Halloween episode, we'll explore some of history's darkest killers, real-life monsters whose crimes were so horrific that their names remain etched in fear. Some of them were caught, tried, and executed. Others vanished into legend, their identities still unknown. Listener discretion is advised. These stories contain disturbing details. Albert Fish, born Hamilton Howard Fish on May 19, 1870 in Washington, D.C., is often remembered as one of the most depraved killers in American history. After his father died and his mother couldn't care for him, Fish was placed in an orphanage where he suffered brutal abuse. Over time, he developed disturbing tendencies, mixing pain with pleasure. He grew up in a family plagued by mental illness, moved to New York, married, and had 6 children. But behind his role as a father, he lived a horrifying double life. Fish mutilated himself, drove needles into his own body, and escalated to kidnapping, torturing, killing, and cannibalizing children. His most infamous crime was the murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd in 1928. He lured her away under the guise of helping her family, killed her and ate parts of her body. Years later, he mailed a grotesque letter to her mother, describing what he had done. That letter led to his arrest. Fish confessed to multiple murders, but the exact number remains unknown. Declared legally sane, he was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing Prison on January 16, 1936. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper terrorized London's Whitechapel district in 1888. His confirmed victims, 5 women, all sex workers, were murdered with precision. Their throats were cut and their organs mutilated, suggesting medical knowledge. Taunting letters signed Jack the Ripper were sent to police and newspapers, the most famous being the Dear Boss letter, where he mocked investigators and promised more killings. Despite intense investigations, his identity was never revealed. To this day, Jack the Ripper remains one of the world's most chilling unsolved mysteries. The Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, California was terrorized by the Zodiac Killer. His crimes began with attacks on young couples, using guns and knives. But what set him apart was his obsession with taunting the public. He mailed encrypted letters to newspapers, filled with threats and strange symbols, including his trademark crosshair. Despite multiple suspects and years of investigation, his identity was never confirmed. The Zodiac Killer remains one of America's darkest unsolved cases. H. H. Holmes. Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as H. H. Holmes, was born in 1861. Charming, educated, and manipulative, Holmes built what became known as his murder castle in Chicago during the 1893 World's Fair. The hotel was a labyrinth of secret passages, trapdoors, hidden gas lines, and soundproof rooms designed for murder. Victims, often young women, were lured inside, tortured, and killed. Their bodies were sometimes disposed of in furnaces or sold for medical research. Holmes confessed to 27 murders, but estimates suggest the true number could be over 200. He was executed by hanging in 1896. Gilles de Rais. A French nobleman and military leader in the 15th century, Gilles de Rais once fought alongside Joan of Arc, but his legacy turned dark. After retiring from war, he abducted and murdered dozens, possibly hundreds of children. His wealth funded lavish rituals, and he was accused of practicing alchemy and occult ceremonies. Eventually convicted, de Rais was hanged and burned in 1440, remembered as one of history's earliest serial killers. Andrei Chikatilo. Known as the Butcher of Rostov, Andrei Chikatilo was a Soviet serial killer active from 1978 to 1990. He preyed on women and children, luring them with promises of food or work before brutally killing and mutilating them. Chikatilo confessed to 56 murders, though he was convicted of 52. His trial shocked the Soviet Union, and he was executed by firing squad in 1994. Dennis Rader, BTK. Dennis Rader, known as BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill, was a church leader and family man in Kansas. Between 1974 and 1991, he killed 10 people, often binding and torturing his victims before murdering them. Rader taunted police with letters describing his crimes. After years of silence, he resurfaced in 2004, sending a floppy disk to the police. That mistake led to his capture. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison, where he remains today. David Parker Ray, the Toy Box Killer. David Parker Ray is remembered as one of the most sadistic criminals in U.S. history. He kidnapped women, imprisoning them in a soundproof trailer he called his toy box, filled with torture devices. Ray played chilling audio tapes to his victims describing what would happen to them. Though convicted of torture and kidnapping, the true number of his victims remains unknown. Some estimates suggest dozens. He died in prison in 2002. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, was an American serial killer who murdered at least 33 young men and boys in the 1970s. By day, he was a contractor and community volunteer who performed at children's parties dressed as Pogo the Clown. By night, he lured victims to his home, assaulted them, and buried many beneath his house. Gacy was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Harold Shipman. Dr. Harold Shipman was a respected British physician who became one of the world's most prolific serial killers. Between the 1970s and 1998, he killed an estimated 250 of his patients by injecting them with lethal doses of drugs. Shipman was finally caught when a forged will raised suspicions. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he later took his own life in 2004. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is perhaps the most infamous American serial killer. Charming and intelligent, he lured women by pretending to be injured or needing help, then abducted, assaulted, and murdered them. He confessed to 30 murders, though the true number may be higher. Bundy escaped custody twice, committed more murders while on the run, and was executed in the electric chair in 1989. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, terrorized New York City in the 1970s. He killed 6 people and wounded 7 others using a .44 caliber revolver. Berkowitz taunted police and media with letters, claiming he was commanded to kill by a demon-possessed dog. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he remains today. Pedro Lopez. Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, confessed to killing more than 300 young girls across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru in the 1970s and 1980s. He targeted vulnerable children, often from impoverished families. Lopez was convicted of 110 murders in Ecuador, but was later released in 1998. His current whereabouts remain unknown. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez terrorized California in the mid-1980s. He broke into homes at night, killing, assaulting, and robbing his victims. He showed no pattern, attacking men, women, and children alike, often invoking satanic rituals. He was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death, but he died of cancer in prison in 2013. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, killed 17 young men between 1978 and 1991. He lured victims to his apartment where he drugged them, killed them, and dismembered them. Dahmer also engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism, keeping body parts as trophies. His crimes were discovered when a victim escaped and flagged down police. Dahmer was sentenced to life in prison, but was beaten to death by another inmate in 1994. These are just some of history's darkest names, killers whose crimes shocked the world and left scars that never truly heal. From the shadows of London's alleys to the streets of America, their stories remind us that true horror doesn't always come from fiction. If you found this episode chilling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Crime Chronicles. And stay tuned because there are always more stories lurking in the dark.